Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I'm talking to Robert Lockhart from Chicago, Illinois. He
Hello,
is Robert. Thanks for joining us.
my
Uh,
pleasure.
he is the core developer of the successful Kickstarter project called Codemancer, a fantasy game that teaches the magic of code. And if in
Mm.
case you can't figure out from the subtitle there, it's an edutainment game. Is that correct, Robert?
Uh, yeah, I mean the word edutainment has kind of become a bad word, and in a way, it mostly referred to things that weren't games, like in its heyday. But yeah, it's fair to say, absolutely, it's entertaining and it's educational, so for sure.
Well, I know what it's about, but let's just hear from the horse's mouth. What is Codemancer and what made you want to make it?
So Codemancer is a video game where you play as a young girl named Aurora who needs to learn magic and fast because she needs to rescue her father from an unknown kidnapper. But the way that magic works in the game is the way that programming works in real life. So although I never explicitly state it, the player is learning to code as they work their way through this quest. Um, and yeah, the idea, as I say, is not hugely original. Although I think I've made some design decisions along the way that are pretty original. But yeah, I thought of it a long time ago, right after reading this book, um, "The Diamond Age" by Neil Stevenson. Um, uh, in it, there's a I don't know if you've heard of this book. It's a science fiction story that basically describes the ideal educational game. It's got the form factor of a book, and it surveils you when you're not using it to figure out what you should learn next, and it presents it to you in this uh, fun method, which is an adventure game starring you. And obviously, like the technology for doing something like this is very very far off, if even possible. But you know what could I do, and what could I teach? So at the time, I was working as a programmer for Wolfram Research, um, and and I was thinking about, yeah, we could teach programming, um, and uh, that was a little bit before this wave that I'm sort of riding now, which is that everyone wants kids to learn programming very early. Um, but yeah, at the time, the form of the idea was very different. It wasn't about magic. It was about this like dumb robot that you were trying to remote control, and it was getting in, you know, uh, all kinds of desperate situations, uh, and then the idea morphed again, and it was about tanks, and then sort of this is the third form that it took, and I kind of felt that this one was really right, and that's why I put a lot of effort into making a prototype and putting it on Kickstarter, and yeah, and I actually was working on writing some code for it right before you called. So,
Sorry to disturb you then.
oh, not to worry.
Okay, so it's edutainment. I'm reading the description here. It also says it's a gender neutral story. It has a female protagonist, and it wants to knock down barriers to teach younger people about programming, which is logical, deductive thinking skills. You instruct the protagonist to act by queuing up these series of actions. So obviously, a young kid or a young person would need a computer or mobile device to play. So what are these barriers, and how does Codemancer break them?
Yeah, I mean the barriers are cultural barriers, and societal barriers. They're not technological ones. Uh, you know, computers are, I mean, in American society, so ubiquitous that it's barely worth thinking about whether a child has access to a computer. Like, of course they do, either at school or at library or at home, or their parents' phone or whatever. Um, but but whether they want to uh, do any particular thing, whether they think it's worthwhile and society values it and they would be well suited to it, is a totally different question. And I think one that's sort of decided by a lot of societal pressures. And one of those that I've observed is this sort of archetype of the hacker. So when you think of a computer programmer, you think of, a skinny white boy like Justin Long, or maybe a chubby white boy like Justin Long's mentor in. I'm thinking of that Die Hard movie about the hackers.
Oh, okay.
Have you seen that one? Live Free or Die Hard, I think.
There's a whole bunch.
That's that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kevin Smith plays like a chubby white hacker, and that's like as much diversity as you get in movies and TV. There's the computer expert in 24 is a woman, but that's like pretty much all the only people I can think of. Anyway, even then they've sort of bought into this nerdy hacker culture, which I think is kind of it's a wall that it's a club that a lot of people don't think they could ever belong to.
Well, when we look at a game like this, it's a puzzle game, and we can say, oh yeah, this is logic. So it's not just for people who may or may not.
Well, I don't want to say that it is a puzzle game. I mean, it's sort of a puzzle game, but there's a lot of like tactical elements too, and creativity. So I'm not willing to pigeonhole it as a puzzle game necessarily.
Well, what I was trying to get at is that it's not just for people who may get into programming. This is about logic and understanding what to do in a certain situation. So
yeah. So in education right now, there's a lot of talk about systems thinking, which I think is a really, really valuable skill. And unfortunately, no definition is attached to this normally when people talk about it. So a lot of people kind of think that systems thinking is, synonymous with computer programming or something. But I think that it is a really valuable skill, and my definition would be just the ability to sort of simulate a complex system in your mind. And the better we all get at that, the better everything will get.
I was noticing some of your video casts. You were showing your actual work. You were coding, and it was showing the Flash screen. So it's a Flash project.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed there were no stretch goals surrounding the technical development methods of porting to multiple platforms, because that's standard. But if someone backed the project at anything over $1, they'd get the game on every platform available, which was PC, Mac, iPad, and Android tablet.
Mm-hmm.
What was your plan for converting your Flash to work on, let's say, a native Android tablet?
So Adobe has this thing called the Air Compiler, and that allows me to build iOS and Android versions. It basically bundles up the whole Flash runtime along with the content I've made and makes it an APK in the case of Android.
Oh, great! That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really nice, and it's underutilized. I think partially because Steve Jobs didn't like Adobe. For whatever reason.
It's not just that, but even in web development, if it's in Flash, there's already a lot of people groaning, saying, "Oh, how are we going to get it on the web?" And they have to look to third-party solutions like Unity or other big compiling programs.
But Unity has a far smaller penetration in terms of the browser plugin than Flash does. So if you're making content for the web that you want to be interactive, like Flash is just a much better solution, unless it needs to be 3D. That's the caveat there.
That's a whole big other issue. I agree with you there. Now, you did very well with the Kickstarter. You had a lot of stretch goals. The last two of them One of them was a Python Udemy course, and the
Mm,
second one was a novel. It sounds like
yeah.
you're going to be making a series of videos for kids and teaching them how to code. Is that right? You're going to be teaching kids after they play your game?
Right. So the idea is to make a little course called Python for Codemancers. So over the course of the game, you're going to learn a lot about programming, but it won't necessarily be sort of couched in the context of normal programming. So there's no typing, for example. Um, and so uh, the idea is to create this course as sort of a bridge for people who want to take it into a quote unquote real programming language, a programming language that's used in a production environment or professional environment. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited about doing that.
It sounds like you're jumping from developer to teacher as a way through your game. It sounds
Well,
like.
I mean, all games teach, right? So if you've designed a video game, then you've been a teacher. Uh, Usually, what you teach is how to be better at the game or just get through it. But in my case, it's something a little closer to the real world, but not all the way there, which is why I need that course, I guess.
Well, that's a good way of thinking ahead for the average or the not the average player. This is the more advanced player who wants more, and they say, "Hey, you know what? I got what this was going for. I want to see more," and
Hmm.
you offer that opportunity. That's great. Now the second one, or the last stretch goal was a novel.
Yeah.
Now, what's that all about? Is that like a companion to the story, or is it a brand new offshoot, like after the events of Codemancer?
So it's not a sequel, but it or a prequel, but it takes place in the same universe. And the author Cassandra Caw has been working on it for the last maybe anyway a great number of months. Let's say less than a year, more than 3 months. My memory is terrible, but uh, the progress is really, really good. I'm really excited about it. When I announced, I posted some links to some of the short works that Cassandra has written, and yeah, I really am enthusiastic and uh, I'm a big fan of hers. So I'm excited she's writing this book. It's going to be a cool. It has many purposes. Or it serves many purposes, even though its primary purpose, of course, is just to be a fun book to read. Uh, it also serves as a larger window into the society and the world in which this system of magic and system of sort of living exists. So in a video game, narrative has to be very terse and understated, because that's not the main focus. The focus is like, when do I get to do stuff as a player? Um, but in the book, we get to see sort of what the implications of this idea is, so that you have, that some people have magical familiars that they're able to command through a series of runes. That has a lot of implications, and she's trying to explore those. It also serves as a sort of strategy guide to the game. So if you're reading before you play the game, you're going to learn a lot about the system of runes before you even start. So you'll get a little bit of a leg up there.
Well, that's definitely sounds very interesting. So you have a game coming out, you've got a Udemy course coming out, and you got this novel coming out. When can we expect to see these things?
So the game is shipping next summer 2016. The book will come out before that, although I'm not sure exactly how long before that. And the course will come out after that, perhaps by a few months.
So that's for the game is summer 2016.
Yes,
Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Robert. That was
my
Robert Lockhart
pleasure.
from Chicago, Illinois, and his successful project on Kickstarter was called Codemancer.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much.